welcome back. The presidency has dismissed reports suggesting that President Bola Tinubu demanded the resignation of Central Bank Governor, Mr. Olayemi Cardoso, due to the Naira's continued devaluation. These claims allege that Tinubu ordered Cardoso to step down before leaving for China, citing the governor's failure to stabilize the Naira, which has worsened from 950 Naira per dollar at the time of Cardoso's appointment to over 1,600 Naira. Tinubu's special advisor on information and strategy, Mr. Bayo Ononuga, has however refuted these allegations. Meanwhile, in August 2024, the Federation Accounts Allocation Committee distributed 1.203 trillion Naira among the federal government, states, and local councils. The revenue, which was announced in a September 2024 meeting chaired by Minister of Finance, Mr. Wale Edu, included 186 billion 363 million naira from statutory revenue, 533 billion naira from value-added tax, and 15.07 billion from electric money transfer, and 468 billion from exchange difference revenue. The total available revenue for August was 2.278 trillion naira, with deductions from costs of collection and transfers amounting to 1.074 trillion. The federal government received 374 billion naira, states got 422 billion naira, and local councils received 306 billion naira. Additionally, 99 billion naira was allocated to derivation revenue to benefiting states. The excess crude account balance was $473 million. The report also noted declines in sectors such as oil and gas royalty, value-added tax, and import and excise duty. We still have in the studio with us Mr. Olufemi Lawson. Mr. Lawson, thanks for staying with us.
Thank you.
They say rumors. The rumor was out there like yesterday, the day before yesterday, that the president has asked the CBN governor, Mr. Cardoso, to resign. Beyond this rumor, this is a clamor that has been around within the finance sector, within the banking sector, the economic sector, and all of that. Do you think that, despite the fact that this has been denied, isn't it time that Cardoso stepped out? Considering the fact that, you see what is happening with the Naira exchange rate and all of that, fiscal policy and everything.
For such rumor to have emerged, there must have been some outer of truth in it. Because if you look at the performance of the CBN governor, especially with the profile he came in with, and you realize that not even the president himself should be impressed, just like every other Nigerians. Because if you look at what was the whole reason for bringing this man, you said, oh, they're coming to it's coming to stabilize the Naira. He has experienced it. And we have often said, coming to govern a country like Nigeria, coming to run a national institution, like Nigeria, like the CBN, sometimes goes beyond being MD and when we are in the kind of situation that this administration inherited, that terrible situation that Buhari left this country, one would have expected that there was not going to be a moment of trial, or trying hands to come and mend certain institutions.
Do you think
there are certain institutions that ordinarily you can just bring in people for political convenience.
Okay.
But there are some institutions that must be seen as delicate. Institutions that are delicate and when a nation needs rescue. And that was why in this country we were able to produce people who were not partisan politicians like Dr. Kuma.
Right. It's interesting that we're talking about the nation needing rescue. But then if you look at the activities of the president himself, especially in terms of purchasing certain luxury items, one would wonder if the president would want to, sack somebody who occupies a position like the CBN, saying that he hasn't even shown interest in the hunger that is affecting the people. Let's be really honest here. But do you think this is unconnected to the recent reports that the CBN refused the National Assembly's 10% drive for Ways and Means and insists on still paying, remitting 5% Ways and Means. Do you think there is a connection? Could there be one?
There could be. But if you look at the general expectation of Nigerians, even the government itself, from the CBN, you realize that there has been no improvement in whatever way you have expected the CBN to have made any change since this man came in as the Minister of Finance.
Isn't that as a result?
Unfortunately, if we're talking about change now, we also have a situation whereby a lot of Nigerians have called for the seat of Mili Kyari because of the position he occupies and what we've seen in that sector. I mean, we still have scarcity of fuel. We still have queues up until this morning. So a lot of Nigerians have called for his seat, but that doesn't seem to be happening. So why then why then would we consider that this might be the case with that of the CBN?
Well, you see, I think there are different issues to the extent that if you look at the challenges confronting the NNPC today, from my own perspective, I think it's about capacity. You see, the NNPC has been carrying a burden that was beyond that institution for a long period. Yes, if you were deregulating, just like you have claimed year in, year out, you should have allowed everyone interested in participating in the sector, to get involved, and would have been off this, thing called queue and scarcity for a long period before now. Okay. But because NNPC claims is deregulating, they at the same time keep playing the role of the key player. You want to be the sole importer, you want to be the sole buyer of product from so place. Then what have you deregulated? Right. Why is still not allowing people to compete, the way it should in a deregulated market? Okay. So NNPC has this problem, but what is responsible mainly is not even Mili Kyari. You would have put anybody there. If you don't change that power that you have given to NNPC that made it so powerful, so influential within the sector, anybody would be another Mili Kyari that you just put there. Okay,
talking about the affairs of the CBN now, some people were saying that the hands of the executive happens to be what is making the CBN not to be able to work effectively. We saw what happened during the last administration, how monies, or even Ways and Means are being taken and all that. Now, do you also think that CBN should, have performed better with the way the executive arm, gets money and have its own affairs there in the CBN?
The CBN should be a very serious institution that should not just be seen as an institution for political influence. The National Assembly, in my own view, has not even been playing its role enough, because if we cannot have a transparent institution in charge of our monetary policy, in charge of our economy like the role CBN is playing, then it tells you about the culture of transparency and accountability of the country as a whole. It is not an institution that ordinarily we should hear the kind of stories we heard in the past, where people were virtually going with CBN with bags and boxes to take out hard currencies for political use. It should be an institution that not just the executive should be, that should not just be protected from the executive, but that must be openly supervised by the National Assembly, which has oversight function over even the executive itself. But for me, the National Assembly has failed over the years in performing its role. And that's why oftentimes things that National Assembly is supposed to take strong positions on, they begin to sit and negotiate like they're in a car market.
Central Bank of every country happens to be a very strong institution. But in Nigeria, for example, we see that most of the decisions Central Bank is to take will come back again to National Assembly. For example, when Charles Soludo was the governor of Central Bank, he actually had a 15-point agenda, which also says that members of the National Assembly should have their own accounts in Central Bank, not in commercial bank, which they stopped before it could see the light of the day. Now, do you think that those policies Central Bank is rolling out or pushing out in Nigeria also would have been better if they are on their own as an institution? Would that be answerable to the National Assembly?
If you allow the CBN to be so independent, if we only require a serious National Assembly, transparent National Assembly, you see, the CBN should not be given the absolute power that it will not be supervised. That may lead to become another channel of corruption. But the National Assembly is what is expected to play that role, of oversight, ensuring that the CBN is governed according to the establishing laws and its activities are transparent enough and it is monitored by the National Assembly. Like I said, the National Assembly a lot of time forgets its role and begin to play like the
Why do you think that happens? Why do you think that happens?
Because of the characters of people you have in the National Assembly.
There's a lack of political will.
Many of them don't even understand the job.
But some of them have been there for so many years. We have people who have been in that. Some people were governors before turning out to be senators. Some people have been in that National Assembly for so many years, Some even take it to be more like their birthright. Some see that place to be their retirement home. So why will you now still say that they don't know the act of legislation?
No, it's not about the number of years they have spent. You've seen legislators who have only spent a term in the Assembly and have performed outstandingly well. We have seen senators who were just there for one term and have made impacts to the extent that the laws that they have sponsored the bill have become landmark. The person who sponsored the not too young to run bill, is no longer in the National Assembly today. That was a major landmark, in his term. But a lot of people who find their way to the National Assembly don't even know the essence of being there beyond wanting to be called distinguished senators.
Right.
Let's take it back to the person of Cardoso, the CBN governor. Should he be taking a fall for the president, considering the fact that it was the president that appointed him, knowing his background? If you go through the history of backgrounds of former central bank governors, it's either Soludo studied economics, somebody first class in economics, Sanusi studied economics and accounting at some point. You had Epolo Uguma, who was an excellent economist. You have Mefiele, who studied banking and finance. But we have Cardoso here, who studied management and administrative studies. And all of a sudden, he is the central bank governor, and we are having policy flip-flop here and there. The Naira is tumbling, the exchange rate and the interest rate and everything. So should he take the fall, or should we blame it on the president, who, knowing his background, still appointed him? Was it some kind of political reward, considering that he had served him as a commissioner in Lagos State? Was it some kind of reward to him? No, or is he a square peg in a round hole?
No, not
because that is what it looks like.
It is not about not having the background. He has also been in the banking sector. He has risen to the pinnacle of his career. He has risen to to become the managing director of a bank in Nigeria. But all that for me is not enough, considering the situation. He could have been CBN governor of maybe any other country, but not a country that is going through the current, situation that Nigeria is going through.
So he's not fit for purpose.
It shows that for 1 year, of over 1 year that he has been appointed, that the capacity to do what the president has asked him to do is not there. And ordinarily, in an ideal society, he would have even, dropped his resignation because nothing is getting better.
We have so many people.
Unfortunately, the president himself has refused to.
We have so many people in that cabinet.
Is the end of the president table?
Mr. Lawson, we have so many cabinet members in this present administration, and Nigerians have also come up to talk about their performances. We have the Minister's Appraisal app that was also launched, and Nigerians also, swiftly open up to say or to talk about how those ministers have been working, and yet the present president of Nigeria is yet to rejig the cabinet. In fact, it got to a point he gave some people a vote of confidence, even as insecurity has been bedeviling in this country. Is it that the president is not really, is it that he's not aware of how those people have been managing the work he asked them to do, or is he playing blind eyes to their activities?
Well, for me, a lot of people who are currently in this government have no business being there, truly. But if you also look at, I will not discuss this every time without referring back to, for me, whoever was coming to inherit this country from Buhari, May 29, 2023, I knew was just coming to inherit a body. A lot of what you are seeing today as the output of these various ministers are as a result of the decadence in those. For instance, look at the mess that was made of the Ministry of Aviation. before Saudi Srika left. And one would not expect Keyamo being a firebrand, this and that, to just come and start. It will be very difficult for
But it's the same
as a
APC
person.
that's been ruling Nigeria for 9 years now, APC government.
But even the government itself has admitted that there were a lot of failures in the past.
We're talking
including
about failures in the
Yes.
past and talking about one administration taking decisions, being more difficult for the other one to take over from. At the beginning of this administration, we saw a revelation came out about the activities of the then minister. I don't know if she's still the minister of Humanitarian Affairs, because we don't know if she has been taken off. She's on suspension.
Better I do.
Yes, better I do.
She's no longer.
She's no longer. Now, that ministry is basically inactive. One would have expected the activities of the ministry to be evident in Borno State, where we just experienced flooding. Now, with all of that, and then you also know that Jim Obaze's report basically, brought out revealed a lot of things, and we haven't seen we haven't seen those issues that were revealed being addressed. So do you still have the impression that previous administration, the Buhari's administration, left a lot of rot for this administration to take over from? Is this administration handling it well? Could they do better?
This administration has a duty to do better. It has a duty not only to address those rots, but also bring people to justice for those rots. Because these were not crimes committed against individuals. These are crimes committed against our country. And it must be seen beyond the fact that it's my party man, it is my friend that's involved in this. If this administration will prove to be genuinely different, otherwise, it may be assumed that it is just, the continuation of what we witnessed in 8 years under Buhari, which I hope would not.
So do you think APC-led government can probe former APC-led administration?
Of course, it's possible. We have seen it happen in states where, successors from the same political party.
Given the history of how the party began and also how individuals who have been ruling Nigeria under that platform also happen to be.
If Nigerians desire that there's a probe, that's why a lot of times I always want us to remember our role as citizens. If the media have been quiet before now, a lot of changes that we have even experienced despite these challenges would not have happened. And that's why everywhere I am, I always give kudos to media organizations like you that come out to expose some of these things. If we have been quiet, it would have been more backward than this for us as a nation. So we have a duty even as Nigerians to demand for some of these issues we are talking about, to demand for probe, and I've come to also learn that there are times we have actually achieved our goals when we make these demands. So not even demanding at all, it's an issue for us, because sometimes even the government is afraid of embarking on this, noting that one day I'll also be former and somebody may. But if as Nigerians we want this to happen,
well, Nigerians have been sorry, we're moving away from the CBN now. It's the state of the nation, really. Nigerians have been demanding, well, some Nigerians have actually demanded for a probe on former Kogi State
Yaya Bello.
Yes, but we haven't. In fact, EFCC chairman, was spitting fire that he was if he doesn't bring him to probe, he was going to leave the seat. But nothing has been said in that regard. So, and then we also have a situation whereby some Nigerians have made certain revelations that have put them on the run right now. Some of them are being arrested for things that they revealed about certain arms of, what the government is doing. And that has put them on the run. So are you going to still blame the media for not speaking up enough?
No, I'm not blaming the media.
Nigerians for not speaking up enough.
I think we are speaking, but we need to do more. Okay. I don't blame Nigerians, because if you look at what the average Nigerian have experienced over the couple of years in this country, you understand that Nigerians have endured a lot.
All right.
Nigerians are speaking.
Let's take a little break. Let's take a little break, because I can understand that we're putting you on the hot seat here. So we'll take a little break, a very short break, and we'll be right back. All right, you're welcome back. Now let's talk about FARC allocation. All right, we've seen a decrease, unfortunately. There's been a decrease from what it was in June and what it is in August. You know, the expenditure. What would you attribute this to? Is government not making enough?
Government is not making enough, especially from the sales of crude oil, which is our main source of revenue.
Why?
Because we have not been able to address the issue of theft.
Okay.
Because it's a major issue. When you are losing more than you are producing, in a sector that gives you the main source of your income as a country, then we cannot expect an increase but a decline. And that is what is reflecting. Nigeria is not making enough legitimately, from the sector that, and you see, it shows that we cannot continue to rely on oil because it is becoming not, prosperous enough for us even as a nation. And that would have been a major opportunity for Nigeria as a country to begin to look into all that viable means, of generating resources, other than just taxing. That we're almost overtaxing our people.
Talking about taxing, we hear that the gross revenue from VAT, value-added tax, for August was 573.341 billion naira, which basically represents a decrease of 51.988 billion naira from July. Is this good or bad?
It's bad. It's bad, and I think it's an indication to the current economic realities because you can only earn, from people who are productive, who are.
But the government is increasing taxes, basically increasing things being taxed.
Yes, it is, but it is not reflecting in its income.
But now
it tells that maybe more of our people are becoming poorer than and are not earning as much as they are earning, and that is already reflecting in the income expected by the federal government.
But the minister said that Nigeria made a revenue of over 2 trillion naira from non-oil export now. And don't you also think that Nigerians are beginning to do more or do better, moving away from sole oil, as their own revenue generation? Because they say this does not even have anything to do with the importation, but export of non-oil goods.
We are not doing enough. We should be doing better than that. But if you look at, from what sector are we making this money? If it's not oil, we must be transparent. It's not enough to just claim that from non-export, non-oil export, we have made over 2 trillion. In what area are we, making these gains? So, because for the average Nigerian, or even for the government itself, the major source of our revenue is placed on oil. So if we are doing better, are we doing better in solid mineral? Are we already, doing well in other areas of like agriculture? What is our capacity? Have we improved our capacity in exporting agricultural products, in exporting mineral resources? Now, this has to be transparent. So it's not enough to just roll out these figures. Okay,
on this FAC allocation, we saw that the federal government got 374.925 billion naira, while the state also have 422.861 billion naira, and local government 306.53 billion naira. Some Nigerians are of the opinion that the federal government should stop giving FAC allocation to state, that we should go back to resource control. And by so doing, Nigerians and their governors of some states will be able to, use the mineral resources God have, deposited in their state to make or to generate more revenue for Nigeria. Recall that Dele Alake told us that we lose $9 billion annually on illegal mining activities in Nigeria. Now, do you also share that line of thought that it's high time federal government stop allocation of this, federal allocation to state for them to be able to generate their own revenue?
It's called the federal system of government, though without true federalism. In a truly federal state, it is the state that should be empowering the central. And that is why we have continuously advocated for the restructuring of this country. It is when the country is restructured on the path of true federalism that we can achieve, because how can you call it federalism, a federation of states, and it is the federal government that is feeding has become the feeding bottle. The resources are made from your state, then somebody sits in Abuja and allocates it. But in a truly federal state, it is the state that will pay taxes, to run the federal government, that will fund the federal government, not the federal government. And that is why a lot of our states have become so unproductive, because they know that eventually at the end of 30 days, something is coming from Abuja. So So even while they sit on mineral resources, while they have human capacity and while they have agricultural potential, they abandon all this.
Okay.
And so that's why we must go back to that need for restructuring.
You know why I
when we
ask
achieve
this?
that, the state becomes so empowered, the people become more productive.
Why I ask this question is the fact that to have 99.474 billion naira, which is just 13% of revenue generated from mineral revenue to be shared among the states that benefit this. But we know that, like you rightly said, some states generate more. And some states don't even generate anything. And yet, the ones who are generating more have been, the ones that they have been taken from them to be able to fund other states that are kind of good on that.
That is why, I said our states are not productive. I've traveled through the length and breadth of Nigeria, and I've never seen a state in Nigeria that should be poor.
Okay.
I've never seen a state in Nigeria that should be poor. But there's no state that if you get here, there's no agricultural potential here, you find mineral resources here. If there's no mineral resources here, you find some,
arable land for cultivation.
Borno to Sokoto to Calabar to Bayelsa to Lagos, every part of this country, they sit on potential. Yeah. But when you get to some of these states, you want to terribly ask yourself, why do we call this a state in the first place? Because you see, like, poverty is written as a signpost. Then when you get into the state, you begin to... I've been to Zamfara a number of times, and when I realized the potentials, the mineral deposit in Zamfara, I would expect that Zamfara should be like a modern city like Abuja in terms of development, judging by what Zamfara has alone. Kogi, that state that could not even pay salary at some point, sits on the number of minerals. Look at Nasarawa. Lithium is being, sourced in Nasarawa today. You can imagine if a state like Nasarawa is sitting on lithium, what the world is looking for, but still have to wait, travel to Abuja every 30 days to get allocation. Our states have become unproductive because of the kind of system we run. And just like we said, final thing, if we don't go back through the path of true federalism and go for resource control, these states will continue to wait for 30 days, go cap in hand to Abuja to get money to run their state where these resources are domiciled.
All right, okay. Mr. Lawson, one last question for you before we wrap it up because we are pressed for time now. There's a recent Supreme Court judgment which says that FAC should not be sent to states that have not conducted elections, and that it should also not be sent to the states to transmit to local government. We didn't hear that, and the local governments got 306 billion naira. Is that a violation of the law, of the Supreme Court judgment?
No, the allocations are now being paid directly into the account of the local government.
Even though that have not conducted
after that judgment, there was a gentleman agreement between the Attorney General and some state governors. I was made to understand, giving a mandatory period of about 3 months or thereabout for all states that are running caretaker committee to conduct election. And if you see now, a lot of states are conducting election. Ogun is conducting election. Few other states are going to be conducting Ondo January because Ondo has a state election in November. So a lot of these states are already conducting elections because the Supreme Court government is binding on them.
So the monies will just sit there.
The monies are now paid directly into the accounts of the local government.
All right, then we must say a very big thank you to you, Olufemi Lawson, Executive Director, Center for Public Accountability. Now, by the way, have you gotten your uniform?
Unity uniform.
Unity. When I saw you coming, for a moment I thought it was a uniform.
Well, I waited maybe before October 1st.
All right, then. Thank you once again for coming on the program.
My pleasure.
We'll take a break now. When we come back, trends will be served to you. So stay with us.